making his fortune selling cigarettes to children, Ratchet went on to pilot a tanker ship for Zexon.
A week later, Ratchet got drunk and crashed his tanker into the ocean world of Aquados. Who can forget these graphic images of baby seals smothered in radioactive waste?
Ah!
Little Coco never had a chance.
How could you? What did little Coco ever do to you?
What? Al, how can you believe these ridiculous lies?
No. I was just,
Come on, guys. We need to get out of here before we all wind up dead. What's the plan?
I have been chatting with a tech droid on the operations level. She may be able to provide the blueprints for these deadlocked collars.
That's great!
But we must be very careful. Vox has eyes everywhere.
Yes, greetings. I am Vox's eyes, and I am watching you while you sleep. Greetings, I'm Solidus-Skully, and I apologize for the creepy interruption, but now we return to our regularly scheduled programming of Ratchet Deadlocked on Dreadzone, on your TV, in your living room right now. But yeah, doing a few Dreadzone challenges, and then we're moving on to greener pastures. Or should I say, icier pastures. By which I mean we're moving on to planet Shaar, which is pretty much our snow level of the game. Abducted by aliens! But yeah, we have a few challenges related to the Avenger tournament, and then we're just sort of moving on. And considering how little I had to say in the previous part, oh boy, golly gee whiz, yeah, we're gonna be struggling for this part. It's why I said before many times that again, the core gameplay does basically do all the heavy lifting of a lot of Ratchet Deadlocked's fun factor, which again makes for a fun game to play. A little bit less so to commentate over, because again, what you're seeing here is what you get, and what we get is, well, arena combat. I will say though, like, I mean, again, they do gradually introduce, like, slightly more enemies to compensate. Like, I mean, again, in the previous Tower of Power tournament, yeah, we did have, you know, the inclusion of, what I believe is meant to be the Eviscerator's minions that shoot all the spikes out of their back. But at the same time, it's not much, and again, one of the elements Insomniac was disappointed in regards to this game was also the cut-down enemy roster. Well, I mean, again, they did also have to do the whole Tyrannoid thing in Ratchet & Clank 3, but I suppose the difference between that and this game is that the Tyrannoids were a bit more of an intentional thing since they were working for Nefarious and had, you know, more visually identifiable levels of how they scaled up in power, but yeah, everything else here is at mercy of the difficulty selection. By the way, when you see that glowing red thing up the top with the Merc and green icon, that's pretty much when you get to use your shiny disco ball of death. I mean, I know I should have mentioned that beforehand many times ago when we saw it used on Catachrome 4, but better late than never. I gotta pad the runtime, baby! Anyway, I mean, there are at least specific variations of the game mode, like, I mean, particularly in the case of the last mission, yeah, don't get hit. Always a bit of a pisser, but, you know. And of course this one, you can only use your wrench. Dearie me, now the game is just becoming Spanner and Clunk. The evil duo of Ratchet and Clank. Which is actually quite a thing, actually, because, I mean, again, like, I believe they did do the whole evil Ratchet thing in Size Matters. Sort of. Ugh, Size Matters, that's that's a game that we might not ever cover, unless I do for a review, because I never technically finished that one. I mean, still have the PS2 copy from 2007 when it betrayed my fucking childhood, and basically, well, you know what, I'll say this about Ratchet & Clank Size Matters. It is the first game that I ever bought that actually had me develop taste. Because, I mean, before 2007, I was just a happy lad enjoying video games, and then here comes Ratchet & Clank Size Matters to go that even your favourite franchises can have shitey games in them, and, well, that's just, a wee bit pish. Yeah, I've got nothing more to say about this round. It's to hit people with your spanner and, go whatever, really. By the way, I'd just like to point out that these are the same sort of robots that arrested Ratchet & Clank aboard the Phoenix, you know, teleporting aboard apropos of nothing. And yet here, Ratchet can just smack them with his spanner apropos of nothing, and again, just easily destroy them. So, how the fuck did he get captured? Did he not have his weapons on him at the time? Why didn't he just use his fucking spanner? And really, again, I don't want to critique Ratchet Deadlocked for, you know, being something of an idiot plot, but at the same time, like, I mean, if you're having Ratchet get captured by enemies where in, you know, regular gameplay we could just easily destroy them, it does create a bit of ludonarrative dissonance. And I mean, I suppose that does also kind of sound a little bit, you know, I guess it does sound like a little bit nitpicky, but at the same time it does really bug me that, again, those same Dread Zone robots were able to capture him, whereas I think at least he could have had, I don't know, maybe Ratchet being subdued by like a stun laser or something. So at least that would have explained how he was caught off guard and just taken aboard without nary a fight in hand, but I don't know, that's just my one problem with the intro. I mean, apart from that, I think, you know, the whole plot works relatively well, except for a few other things that I'll talk about later, but we're not quite there yet. Although I think I've already alluded to them at this point because of the because of the startlingly lack of stuff to talk about in terms of constantly evolving stuff. Because again, like, I mean, I guess part of the reason why Deadlocked remains a very stalwart sort of game is that, again, it starts off doing one thing, it does it really well, but it doesn't really evolve as much as, you know, you'd like it to, or a lot of what the other games would have showcased to you. So, I mean, like, in terms of anything else, the game just, I don't know, like, I mean, again, it's not a bad game, I want to stress that. I do like Ratchet Deadlocked and all that it does, but it's a far cry from what it could have and should have been in my eyes, and, well, I mean, quite frankly, again, I'm usually against a bit of a reboot kind of thing, especially given the fact that Insomniac hasn't done this tone in a very long time, but I'd be curious as to what Ratchet Deadlocked would have been had it had a full and complete development cycle, as was initially intended. But I think I'll save my thoughts on that, because now we have arrived on planet Shaar, so here's the preview with Dallas Wanamaker.
Tonight on Red Zone, Team Darkstar embarks on a journey through the hallowed grounds of planet Shaar. What was once just a boring, historic ancient temple is now the centerpiece of this explosive new battle course. Ratchet will have to complete some of Dread Zone's deadliest challenges ever, just to gain entrance into the main temple. But even if he survives that far, no contestant this season has come out of that temple alive.
Now, you might be thinking that since we're on an ice level here, that we might be in for some slip and slide ice-based gimmicks, but no, it's just a bit of a palette swap, for better or for worse. And I mean, in terms of what Shaar is as a planet, like, I mean, again, it does have a lot of ancient temples that I guess Dread Zone has to pay for, because, yeah, our main mission here is to just blow up the temple, because, fuck it, entertaining television. But that wasn't always the case, because Shaar actually does have a more interesting mission that I will explain to you right now. While my teleprompter still has battery left. But yeah, one of the main missions on planet Shaar was initially based on Ratchet rescuing a fellow contestant of Dread Zone called Hydro Girl, who was a hero from Aquatos, and this is referenced at the end of the game actually, so again, it's not like it's completely cut, but again, like, at the end of the game you'll have Hydro Girl thanking Ratchet for rescuing her from the planet Shaar. Where I believe the idea was that she was basically stuck in frozen water inside the temple and Ratchet had to go off and save her. Why it was cut, I have no idea, but again, you can kinda tell that this mission was intended for the game, because once you finally get inside the temple, your thing is to blow it up, and that's it, the mission just sort of ends apropos of nothing. Which again, is a bit of a sad thing, because it was kind of highlighting an element of the plot that I was discussing earlier. Again, Ratchet interacting with other heroes, either rescuing them and befriending them, or, you know, things getting tense and Vox manipulating them into fighting Ratchet for, you know, money, glory, and, you know, whatever else. And again, I just feel like seeing other heroes in Dread Zone would have not only legitimized the threat, but at the same time also shown the grim odds that Ratchet and Clank were facing. Again, would they have to face off against them in combat, or, again, would they have stuck to their moral principles and saved them for the sake of, you know, being truly good, or just for the sake of preserving their life? But again, I'm just not sure whether or not Insomniac were willing to either go that far, or if it was just the development cycle that let the game down. Because, I mean, Ratchet Deadlocked is intentionally trying to go for much more of a darker sort of tone compared to, you know... Well, I mean, I wouldn't say future games, you know, kind of up the light and softiness, is that even a word? Again, I wouldn't say that they try and emphasize the lighter and softer elements, but... I don't know, it's, Again, if it has the potential to go to darker places, go for it, but again, if they're not gonna take it, then it's a little bit frustrating to me. Anyway, this is also the second part of our mission. Use the Landstalker to use the blowy uppy guns to destroy stuff, get inside the temple, then do part 3 to blow up the temple, and that's it. I'm guessing parts 4 and 5 would have been to rescue Hydro Girl, which, to be completely honest, compared to some other levels in the game, I kinda wish they'd kept in, because, again, not only would it have been a bit more of a dynamic, it would have been, you know, going somewhere with a goal in mind, but I don't know, it makes it feel a lot less like challenges for the sake of itself, which, I don't know, I think does contribute to more immersion, which again, I suppose does kinda... Again, I'll sort of explain this, like, I mean, again, when people use the phrase that things are a little bit too video gamey, obviously there are certain caveats and, you know, exceptions to the rule, like if it's an arcade game or something that doesn't really have much of a story to begin with. But I mean, if you're just doing things just because without any tangible goal in mind, it just runs the gamut of just feeling like you're just doing stuff because whatever. In which case it does kind of, well, conflict with the whole sort of story you're trying to tell. Or at least, you know, creating a believable game world in which gameplay takes place. And while I wouldn't say that that's an damning, you know, that's a damning factor, you know, that ruins your game forever or whatever, it does also lead to everything being a little bit disconnected and just sort of pulling you out of the experience a little bit. Which I suppose is somewhat of a minor issue I do have with Deadlocked as much as I like the game, because again, it's packing an atmosphere, it's packing in a relatively decent story for as much as it was cut out. But at the same time, though, it's a bit irritating to me, and again, when you're in the heat of the game and actually playing it for yourself, you know, you don't really notice it as much, but... Again, which is why I'm very conflicted when talking about Deadlocked, because again, it's a game that I love, I enjoy playing it, and again, I am able to look past a lot of the complaints that I do have for it for the sake of having a good time and enjoying myself, but... I don't know, I just wish I could enjoy it more than I could, and moreover, I just wish that the game was able to have its complete development cycle and, you know, live up to all these concepts in as great a mold as it is able to do. If that makes any sense. God, my rambly mouth is a little bit mushy today. Wee, blasting robots, doing a thing, singing a song because I'm out of commentary. That didn't rhyme, and now I boot off the stage. Yeah, now the gunships actually... Oh, actually no, those are the new enemies, basically reskinned equivalents of the Gatling gun robots you fought in Ratchet & Clank 3. Yeah, it's kind of curious actually. I'm wondering if there are any other reskins of certain enemies, at least in terms of behavior and attack patterns, because, I mean, again, you see the little ankle biters being akin to, you know, like the basic Tyrannoids that took a chomp out of you. I don't know, I mean, I guess Insomniac had the comfort of at least, you know, having Ratchet & Clank's gameplay formula down to a science at this point, and therefore knew what, you know, sort of enemy dynamics to use on a basic level. Again, that could just easily be slotted into the game with a new skin on top and just call it a day, really. I don't know, like, I mean, it's, I mean, one might call it a bit wry and cynical, but at the same time, it's also a very efficient use of, you know, a lot of the programming quirks and tricks that they had, you know, from previous games. Yeah, I wish you could hear more of the soundtrack right now, but apart from my waffling, it is actually really fucking cool. I recommend you... Again, like, I mean, if nothing else, like, I mean, at least look up Ratchet Deadlocked soundtrack, because it is incredibly fun. Well, fun, cool, synthy, intense. I do actually have to wonder, though, because, like, I mean, around, I believe it was Kraken Time, yeah, David Bourgeois stopped composing for the series, and I honestly gotta have to wonder why they did, because... I haven't really looked into it myself, but I don't think there was any bad blood between him and Insomniac, and, you know, they seem to have a pretty good working relationship, and, you know, even for other Ratchet & Clank games like Size Matters and Secret Agent Clank, David Bourgeois did work on those games, so... I'm curious, like, I mean, was it a stylistic choice, or did David Bourgeois want to do different things? Because I remember hearing an unconfirmed rumor that apparently David Bourgeois was getting tired of the contractor work and just wanted to get back to DJing. Which, I mean, again, makes sense given that he is an electronica composer, so, I mean, it makes sense, but... I don't know, I mean, if that is the truth, then that's a little bit of a shame, actually, because, again, his scores for Ratchet & Clank are some of the... In my eyes, some of the most memorable pieces of the series, and while I'm not going to completely discredit the likes of, you know, Kraken Time, the reboot, or Rift Apart or whatever, it is a bit of a shame that, you know, the series kind of abandoned the whole electronica thing, because... While they did go for more of a, you know, cinematic film score kind of thing, I don't know, there's something to be said about the electronica style here that just, I don't know, it really hits a certain sweet spot for me in giving the Ratchet & Clank series a bit of a musical identity. No, but anyway, this is also by far the most boring mission objective, and this is also the last one. Turning bolt cranks in order to destroy the temple, which we don't actually see get blown up, we're just told it does. Which again is there to imply that we're either blowing a hole in the floor to rescue Hydro Girl, or, I don't know, the budget ran out and Insomniac was like, oh shit, game over, temple blown up, you're not gonna see her, but we totally did. But again, it's just a bit of a shame, cut at the seams, and gotta rush our product for the Christmas release. Thanks, Sony. Okay, trivia time, because we are desperately running out of things. Yeah, here's a little fun fact for you, and something you're going to be seeing right here is that a Dread Zone crate was initially intended for the single player, but what it does is unknown because it was cut from the game. Obviously. And again, I have no idea what this is meant to be. I'm guessing, and again, this is only really going to stretch here, that this was possibly meant to be the Deadlocked version of the Inferno mode from Ratchet & Clank 3, where again, you hit it with your wrench, have basically invincible time with dual-wielding wrench action and just take down a few enemies, which I suppose does make sense if they were basing a lot of their multiplayer experience from 3, and, you know, in turn using, you know, the Inferno mode as a means of clearing out vast waves of enemies, but yeah, it's kind of a shame why they cut it. Which, I mean, actually does have a bit of a funny story as to how it was created, because I believe it was either that or the Jackpot crate in 3, which is basically the story of how, I think it was Ted Price going like, again, if you can think of a new crate idea, I'll buy you a case of beer. So, I guess maybe its reason for being cut was the lack of beer purchasing action. It's a bit of a shame. I mean, you know, maybe if Insomniac tempted Sony with a case of beer of their choice, then maybe things could have been a different story, giving them an extension on development. Maybe give it like a 2006 PS2 release, which, I mean, it was fine. I mean, you still had high-selling games like God of War 2 on the PlayStation 2 in, like, 2007, so really, just have at it. Which, I mean, even in and of itself, is supposed to saying something, because the PS2 lasted a fuckload of a long time. Like, I mean, I think it didn't go completely defunct until, like, I think 2014 or 2013. So again, like, I mean, well into the PS3, Xbox 360's lifespan, you still had the PS2 hanging in there. And I mean, even if no major releases were really on the thing, I mean, you still had sports games like FIFA 2014 still being on there, so again, the console had a really long life, and again, I mean, there is a reason why I consider the PS2 one of my favorite consoles of all time, and by God, that little sucker hung in there. But well, thank you for that, Juanita. That was very informative, and I'm sure she's getting off to that as we speak. And what the fuck? Okay, I guess you can penetrate force fields. That's frightening. Lock your doors and windows, kids, because Merc and Green are watching you. So, catch your dudes and dudettes next time, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.